Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we have a fresh batch of new Nintendo Direct rumors to discuss here. Some of this I really want to believe. It's some fun, exciting stuff, but there are some rumors here that are conflicting. I'm not sure what exactly we should believe. Some of this stuff is coming from places I think are credible, others I think maybe are a lot more debatable, but there's certainly some interesting stuff being suggested here. So we're going to be diving into it and dissecting it all today. Now, jumping right into things here, Nash Weedle has provided a new Leak Express. Now, we talk about Nash Weedle a lot here on this channel because the track history shows that they get a lot more right than they get wrong, and so I think they have some reliable sources, so they're certainly worth talking about here, and this is what they're leaking as of their latest report. Leak Express. ARMS 2 might be on the way. I've received information about a Nintendo game in development for Switch 2 with the following details. A game featuring fist-fighting combat, a strong online component, and it comes with improvements in input lag for sound and vibration that enhance the impact sensation. Now keep in mind the wording's a little off because it's a translation, but this is what he's heard. As he says here at the end, the clues have led me to think of the sequel to the Switch fighting game. What do you think? So, to be clear here, Nash Weedle's not leaking that ARMS 2 is in development. He's leaking these details about a game that leads him to think that it's ARMS 2 in development, and what I think is that that is probably the case. Nintendo is probably working on the next ARMS, which is exciting. Maybe they're going to call it Legs, but it is talked about how it's a fist-fighting combat game, so maybe there wouldn't be legs this time around, or maybe they can include a character or two that uses their legs. I don't see why they can't put a character or two like that and make a joke about how the sequel would have legs. Like, I think they can still do something like that, and maybe they don't even necessarily call it ARMS 2. It could be ARMS, legs or something. That would be hilarious. But I definitely think this makes a lot of sense. ARMS was actually a pretty successful new IP in the launch year of Switch 1, so now that we're early on for Switch 2, if this next ARMS game is not that far off, it could still come out fairly early on to the generation and build upon the already strong start to this series. It makes tons of sense. However, there's a few other elements to this I want to consider. One, since he does not know if it's actually the next ARMS game, let's entertain the possibility that it might be something else. Like, what if it's another fist-fighting Nintendo IP? Like Punch-Out. Punch-Out has been around for a longer time. It's a historic series. What if this is a new Punch-Out instead? The fact that ARMS is more relevant and successful, and there's a strong online component that's apparently being leaked here, and that they're trying to improve things with the input lag and such, that would lead me to believe that they're building upon what they established with ARMS, which, yeah, more strongly suggests this is ARMS and not Punch-Out. However, I did think Punch-Out was at least worth mentioning, and I'll actually go a step further here. The similarities between ARMS and Punch-Out, they're so obvious, I actually would be rather surprised if in this sequel they don't do something to reference that. Like, I think literally they should just put Little Mac, the main character from the Punch-Out series, in ARMS. And they could even maybe include a mode that's more reminiscent of the arcade mode of Punch-Out. Like, I think something like that would be a really nice compromise to keep Punch-Out somewhat relevant and maybe merge the series a little bit. So if we're getting an ARMS 2, I predict that Little Mac will be one of the new characters in the roster, and yeah, I actually am going to predict that another character will be fighting with their legs, to go along with that joke. But there's actually something else about this leak that I think is rather interesting, because we have to think about the developer. The developer most likely would be the team that made Mario Kart World. The Mario Kart team, before it came out with Mario Kart World, they developed ARMS, but ARMS came out when? Summer of 2017. So, literally 8 years later, they came out with their next game. We understand from the Ask Developer series about Mario Kart World that during development they had to make a shift, and it is suggested that they put Mario Kart World on a back burner for a little while. Basically, what I'm getting at here is that the Mario Kart team probably wasn't only developing Mario Kart World for the last 8 years. there's no way Mario Kart World took that long for this team. They could have probably made 2 Mario Kart Worlds in this time, and actually what I'm getting at here is that they basically did. What I'm getting at is that they're probably actually pretty far into development, and maybe they were also working on ARMS 2, which is going to come out early on into the Switch 2 generation. Now, I think that would be an interesting implication from this leak here, which I think will be relevant for something else we'll be talking about a little bit later into the video. Hint, hint, it's about Mario. However, I do want to clear up on one more thing. Technically, what Nashville is talking about here, he's not indicating it's going to be announced in the next Nintendo Direct. This could be a little bit of a ways off. There's no suggestion as to when this is coming out, so we'll just have to wait and see on this one. However, there is something in this thread that I do think is about the next Nintendo Direct. So scrolling down here, Alejandro asks Nash, these days, Yasunori Mitsuda is flat out recording music. Do you think it could be from Monolith Soft's new project and that it might come out this year? So for those that don't understand the context, we've actually been hearing about directly from this Xenoblade composer that he's been working on some new music project, and it's being teased in a similar fashion to when he's been working on music before, which happened shortly before the announcement for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. So a lot of Xenoblade fans are right now thinking that this could be a hint that the next Monolith Soft project is going to get announced soon. And so Nash Weedle responds to Alejandro and says, I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me. And so here Nash Weedle is suggesting that, well, yeah, that makes sense to me because I already think that Monolith Soft is going to be announcing something really soon. Context for this, there's already a rumor that Nash Weedle's put out there from about a month or so ago that Monolith Soft is gearing up to announce their next project in the next Nintendo Direct. And so you might say, well, this is not new information. But it actually is, and it's actually suggesting 2 new things here. One of them, the fact that his opinion hasn't changed on the matter about a month or so later, because plans can change, things can be pushed back and such, so he still seems to be believing that Monolith Soft is about to announce something in the next Direct. But 2, and perhaps more importantly, when we're having a conversation about Mitsuda recording new music, this comes with a very obvious implication that this would be for a new game. And so, when we go back to the initial rumor that came from Nash Weedle about Monolith Soft getting ready to announce something in the next Direct, that it might be their next new game, be it Xenoblade or whatever Project Legacy supposedly is, there's also the other strong possibility that Monolith Soft might simply be announcing some Nintendo Switch 2 editions or Switch 2 enhancements for the Xenoblade games, which they desperately need, which we talked about a few days ago, and there's actually a decent amount of evidence that Monolith Soft is going to be providing enhancements for the Xenoblade games in the not-so-distant future. Basically, this is implying here that he thinks Monolith Soft is about to announce a new title and not just Switch 2 enhancements, which I still think could come, but yeah, that's the implication here. More reason to be optimistic that maybe the next Nintendo Direct we're going to see what Monolith Soft has been cooking up, and that has me very excited. But there's actually another little update from Nash Weedle regarding the Direct. And it's in this thread here regarding some potential multiplayer Zelda stuff for the 40th anniversary. But it's not about that. Someone had asked, Antono193 basically asks, when will the next Nintendo Direct happen? January or February? And Nash Weedle just flatly says, February. Now, February has been my expectation. I feel like January, while possible, is a little optimistic. And March has also been a possibility. Nintendo has had us wait that long before for the big general. But February usually is a time we get that Direct. So this doesn't come as much of a surprise, but the way Nashville is responding here seems to suggest that he just expects the Direct to be happening in February, as if that's what he's heard. Now, if you've gone this far into the video, let me simply point out that I have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers, so if you find yourself enjoying my videos and you haven't subscribed already, I would very much appreciate it. But not everyone actually seems to agree that a Direct is happening in February. Necro Felipe from Universal Nintendo has a different projection. So in December they said this, 2026 is almost knocking at the door and these are my projections right off the bat. January, in the second week, Mario Tennis Fever news. second half of the month, general Nintendo Direct. Not a partner, not a mini, a general Direct, so he's being very clear there about his projections. But then he says in February on Pokemon Day, there'll be the Pokemon Presents, which that's the most obvious prediction ever. There's always a Pokemon Presents on Pokemon Day. That's nothing new. But the reason more people are paying attention to this right now is because this part of his projections has come to fruition. In the second week of January, Nintendo did indeed give us a lot of news on Mario Tennis Fever. They provide a pretty significant new trailer, the overview trailer for Mario Tennis Fever. And so now people are thinking that these projections were actually leaks, and Necro Felipe has leaked that the next Nintendo Direct is going to be in the second half of the month. Now, Pedroca here on the thread had asked any reason for the Direct to be January instead of February, and Necro simply said nothing in particular. There's nothing here that's clearly indicating that Necro is intending to share this out as a leak. He's framed it as his own projections, which is his own opinion, but is it his opinion based off internal information like a source, or is this just what he thinks makes sense? Typically, Directs happen in February, and maybe Necro is simply indicating January because he kind of senses that, because this is a slightly different situation because we are still pretty early into Switch 2 generation, and perhaps Nintendo would want to put out a Direct sooner for this reason. I think that's a good reason to maybe predict January, but there's nothing here that's clearly stating it as a leak, so I wouldn't jump to that conclusion. Of course, if the Direct does end up happening in January, I'll be completely fine with that. However, we have another rumor that's been gaining a decent amount of traction that is suggesting something else, and I really, really want to believe this, even though maybe we shouldn't. So here it is. BFun on Twitter has said Nintendo Direct. No Nintendo Direct will take place in January. However, in February, there will indeed be a huge Nintendo Direct featuring the upcoming 2026 games, including the one everyone's waiting for, a new 3D Mario, and they're claiming this is going to happen on February 10th, which falls on a Tuesday, which, yeah, I mean, that's a possibility. Nintendo could do it on a Tuesday. And so this right here is in line with how Nintendo has handled Directs in the past, so it's a little believable from that perspective. But there's a few things here that leave me skeptical about this. One, I quite frankly don't know too much about the history of BFun, so that alone, obviously, like, if there's not a long track history here of them being correct, then this might as well basically be hearsay then. But also, two, while the Direct happening on a Tuesday is certainly believable, this is the same week that Mario Tennis Fever is coming out, and I'm not saying Nintendo can't have a Direct in the same week a game is coming out, but I find, in general, Nintendo does not do that. I would say it makes sense for the Direct to happen a little bit later into February or earlier. They could still have the Direct in the same week, but I would in general lean away from assuming that's what they're going to do. And then the third reason why I'm skeptical about this is because I've asked around, since I don't have a much understanding of this person's history regarding leaks, and from what I've heard, we shouldn't quite believe this rumor. There's something a little bit off about it. I can't say more than that. However, I really do want to believe this because they are saying a new 3D Mario will be in the Direct. Now, on one hand, I think it makes tons of sense for Nintendo to have this upcoming Direct and reveal something huge like the next 3D Mario, because right now we don't quite have a game like that to look forward to that it has been officially announced. And I think having something big like that on the horizon that we know about would definitely do a great job for getting more people interested in the console and wanting to pick it up, and also increasing those conversations about the console, which in turn is more word of mouth marketing for Nintendo. Of course, on the other hand, we've also seen Nintendo like to have quicker turnarounds with their games between announcement and release. So let's say 3D Mario is indeed going to be the big holiday title. There's still plenty of reason to think that they might not announce this until summer and it comes out in the holidays. They might be intending to have a quicker turnaround here, so that's just something else I think we should keep in mind. Of course, there's also been a lot of conversations and speculations that maybe the next 3D Mario is not ready, is not going to come out this year, which from a historical perspective is a little hard to believe because Nintendo's always had their mainline Mario experience available by that second holiday of a new generation. But many people are skeptical because we did just get Donkey Kong Bonanza last year, and that was made by the Mario Odyssey team. Which actually brings us back full circle to what Nashville was talking about regarding ARMS 2. As I mentioned, if this is happening, this could be an example of what we saw with the Mario Kart team. They worked on Mario Kart World throughout these last 7 to 8 years or so, but it was not the only thing they were working on. How could it be? It makes more sense to think that they were working on multiple projects and they've been saving them for Switch 2. They launched the Switch 2 with Mario Kart World, and now they're wrapping up this other project they've been developing over these years, which, according to Nash Weedle's sources, seems to be ARMS 2. Now, I'll briefly mention that if this is somehow Punch-Out instead, then maybe it wouldn't be the Mario Kart team working on this, but it probably is the next ARMS. And so, point I'm making here, the Mario Odyssey team, in a very similar way, was working on Donkey Kong Bonanza throughout the Switch era. And they also made mention, similar to how they made mention in the Ask Developer series about Mario Kart World, in the Ask Developer series about Donkey Kong Bonanza, that at some point in development, they had to make a shift for Switch 2, suggesting that they were not working on Donkey Kong Bonanza throughout the entire time, which would make sense. Why would that game take them 8 years? And so you gotta think that the Odyssey team also has to have been working on something else over these last 8 years. There's no way they've only been able to make one game this entire time. There's a lot of key members that would work on Mario that did not work on Bonanza, such as Koizumi and Koji Kondo, which is just more reason to believe that they absolutely have been working on 3D Mario, and it really shouldn't be that far off either. So while I don't necessarily believe this rumor from BFun, I do not think we should be thinking that 3D Mario is a ways off. I think that whole argument about how the Odyssey team just made Donkey Kong Bonanza is not really considering the whole situation. I don't think we should be assuming that that's the only game they've been working on the last 8 years. In fact, there were rumors that the Odyssey team had split off before Bonanza was even announced to make a 3D Donkey Kong game, while the other part of them would be working on 3D Mario. So all the evidence suggests is that those rumors were true. And history also shows that 3D Mario should be happening. Really just comes down to, how long are we waiting here? Are we finally going to have a new generation where there's not going to be a mainline Mario ready by that second holiday for the console? I think I've made it already very clear that I very much want to believe that 3D Mario will be coming out this year. Fingers crossed, but regardless, I remain confident that Nintendo is going to bring the goods. So, we'll see. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.